We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. Here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, we got Mike Simmons on the call here today, and Mike, I just really appreciate you giving me the time, especially on a Sunday. A lot of people want to reserve that day for other things, but I think we're going to have a ton of things to talk about. But I usually throw it to my guest to do a quick introduction. But I think I have a feeling some people are going to know who you are, but we'll go from there.
Good. That'd be great. Hey, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Also, it is a Sunday. It just goes to show that we're either really crazy or really accommodating. I don't know, one of the two, but I had the time, so why not, right? As far as me, my name is Mike Simmons. I'm in Michigan. I do my investing in Michigan. And I started off about 12 years ago, right when everything sort of tanked. My wife and I didn't know any different. We started flipping houses. And we had some success early on. I always tell people if that first deal had gone really, really poorly, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I would be working some 9-to-5 job because it probably wouldn't have gone over very well in my family. But we did really, really well in that first deal. And we started flipping houses. And at some point, my wife kind of wanted to get off the roller coaster. Real estate can be stressful a little bit. Mm-hmm. And things don't always go perfectly. And it just wasn't good for her mental health to be involved in the kind of the roller coaster ups and downs, especially when you're growing your business and kind of figuring things out. So that was a blessing in disguise, kind of, because when she stepped away, it was sort of like all reservation of like being conservative and things, because I have a very high risk tolerance. It just sort of took off. I started making a lot more offers and getting more deals, and I was just running through deals a lot faster, and we scaled it up. And then at one point, I decided that, this flipping houses is great. It's very much dependent on me being out there doing things. So I probably should diversify my efforts and start buying rentals as well. So we started building our rental portfolio, and I added wholesaling properties to the mix. And if you don't know what wholesaling is, it's essentially flipping contracts. You're getting a property under contract and selling that contract to a house flipper or landlord in most cases. And I started doing a lot of that, learning a lot about myself as I was growing my business, building a team, scaling up, and adding systems into the mix. Because originally, the first handful of years I was doing this, I would get a property under contract. We'd go to Home Depot and we would pick out flooring and new cabinets. And every time we did it, we picked out different materials, and we what do we feel about this one? And what's our, what kind of a palette do we want to create? It was kind of silly from a business standpoint that we were reinventing the wheel. And I got really good at dialing in systems and processes, bringing people on to my team who were better at specific things than I was. And I had to admit to myself that I was in the way. So we scaled up, and today, over the last 4 or 5 years, we flip or wholesale anywhere between 90 and 110 properties a year, and building a portfolio of rentals kind of slowly. It's not an aggressive approach that way, but just building them nice and slowly, and having that residual income coming in from those.
Sure. So, you mentioned you started things off with, 2 or 3 deals. Was it a week or a month? And now you're averaging 10 to 15?
We started in 2008, and my company really hit that hockey stick growth in 2016. So I spent, and then probably for the first 2 or 3 years, I was doing a deal every couple of months. And then a couple of years later, I was hitting that 1 to 2. And then by 2015, I was doing 2 to 3 deals a month probably. And then what happened was, for me, and I'm a big fan of mentors, masterminds, coaching, I joined a mastermind, and I finally was surrounding myself with people who had gone much farther than I had. Sometimes when you're in a local market, you can flip 10 houses a year, and you're kind of one of the big dogs, and you start thinking, wow, I've really got this figured out. I'm doing 10 a year. And there's nothing wrong with doing 10 a year. That is a nice business. But I was unable to see much past that, because nobody I knew was doing much more than that. So when I joined this mastermind, it was a national mastermind, and we would fly into a central location, and I was surrounded by people who were doing 20, 50, 100, 120 deals a year. And it just blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing like 10 or 15. Like how are you I'm running around like crazy. How could you possibly do 100? And the first inclination is to go, BS. They're not doing that many, right? Until you get to know them and you kind of see their business and you go out and you visit them and you understand, no, wait, they are doing that, but it's because they're not doing everything. They created a business and I'm running this job. I have a job basically that I've created for myself, and they were running businesses. They had teams, they had people answering phones, they had acquisitions people, they had all these different people project managers working in their company. And I realized, oh, that's how they're scaling, because they're not doing it all themselves. And once I understood the power of hiring people and building a team and creating a culture of people who are all rowing in the same direction, that's when my company just absolutely exploded. And that was the reason why I wrote my book, because people are asking, how did you do that, right? And everyone's looking for this like software or the secret list that you can get, right? Like everybody wants that. It's like this, they want the silver bullet, but the reality is there's no secret to it. It's scaling a real estate investing company is not really any different than scaling many other companies. It's about hiring the right people, creating systems and processes, documenting those processes, making sure that things can be delegated effectively. And the owner, you and I, we should be spending our time on higher level stuff, like maybe going out and finding deals or raising money, talking to investors. That's where the owner of the company should be spending most of their time, not necessarily answering phones or sending out emails to people. You really should be working on building your company, not running all the day-to-day operations.
Right. So, what I think is really interesting is that we hear time and time again that, especially at a certain point, it's great when you're starting out, you're a single person, you're just trying to, you hit the grind, you got to grind it out, you got to work it out. And there's value and there's a lot of equity to be had there. But there's a certain point where we hear people say, you got to work on your business, not in your business, as a great mantra. But to actually take the action to pull that off and actually take the steps to do that is another thing. Like, what did you do? You mentioned the mastermind. One of the other mantras that I say time and time again, that you either can become a master and put the 10,000 hours into it yourself, or you can learn from somebody who has already put in those 10,000 hours.
Yep.
Talk about like the importance of some of that in getting through some of that mindset.
Totally. Here's the great conundrum in really any business, but real estate is what we're talking about. Here's the great conundrum. You start a company, it's just you, or just you and your wife maybe, and you start building it, and you're learning how to run this company, and you're learning how to make great offers, and you're looking for how to find great deals. And then maybe you're learning how to renovate properties and hire contractors, and you're learning how to run the numbers on a rental to make sure that it's going to cash flow properly. And you're learning all these things about how to run your business, and you get great at it. And you say, now I want to scale it. I want to be bigger. Here's the great conundrum. You have to take what you have become a master at and what you're great at, and now you have to teach other people how to do it, and you have to step out of it. It's like, in order to scale, if you truly want to scale up beyond what a one person can do, you no longer are the person doing the thing that got you where you are. You have to step back and let other people do that thing. And you have to be okay in many cases with them doing it 80% as good as you might have done it in some cases, right? I think in a lot of cases, you can look at a company or your business and go, okay, maybe you're a really good salesperson. I'm really great at sales, but I'm not so great at project management. But you're doing it because you're a one-man band, right? So there's times where you can bring people in who are great project managers, and you plug them into that role, and they actually enhance it. But in order for you to step out of the business, there will be times in times during your growth where you're going to have to bring people in, and they may not do it exactly as well as you do. Or maybe even more frustrating, they do it as well as you do, they just do it differently. And you have to wrap your mind around, because they're not doing it exactly like I would, doesn't mean it's wrong. And 80% of me is better than me doing everything. So from that standpoint, it's really, really interesting. It's like, oh, you're really great at finding deals and getting things under contract, and even maybe running a rehab crew or whatever, or managing your rentals. You're really great at that. Well, if you want to be a $5 million company, you can't do that stuff. You have to teach it. And when I was in a 9-to-5 job or the corporate world, the great mistake that was made a lot of times was you'll take like an engineer. I was in the automotive industry for a while. You'll take an engineer. He's a great engineer, and you make him the engineering manager. Now he's managing engineers and he's not doing the engineering, and he fails. Why? Well, he's not an engineering manager. He's a great engineer, right? So business owners are not always great managers. They're great at what they do. They're great at running the company. They're just not great at managing people. So that's the trick and the thing you have to get over. But as far as masterminds go, you nailed it. You can spend 10,000 hours and figure it out, and you can figure it out. But will you go through all of the crap that you have to go through, the ups, the downs, the failures, the setbacks, the depression of things didn't go right? Will you push through all that? And how long will it take you? Like, when you're 21, time seems infinite, right? I don't care if it takes me, I don't care. But as you get a little older and you start going through business, you realize time is the one thing you can't get back. You can't do it, just marches on. So if you can join a mastermind, even if it costs money, if you can pay a little bit to accelerate your learning by years, which is exactly what I did. I joined a mastermind. It wasn't cheap, but the great thing was I got to sit next to and have direct contact with people who literally are 5 years down the road, farther than me. 5 years earlier, they had the exact company that I had. Now they're where I want to be, and I could sit with that person and go, what did you do that worked? And what did you do that didn't work? What's some advice that you would have for me as a person that's clearly pushing in the direction of where you are? And it's like, well, I did this. I tried this. It didn't work. This is a big mistake that I made. I'll never do that again. These are some lessons learned. And then guess what? I just compressed everything. It took them 5 years to figure out organically. I compressed it into 12 months. And I was able to grow my business where I wanted to be 5 years later in 12 months. And a lot of it was hiring, systematizing, building a team. I talk a little bit about in the book about building a culture. And it's really difficult to get people, especially who are a one-man band, to give 2 cents about culture. Like, what is it? Who cares? I'm one person. I'm going to hire somebody. They're going to run my rehabs. Like, what do you care? And I always tell people, culture is like, it's the company's personality, right? You can say, somebody can say, hey, Jack, you need to work on your personality. You're kind of a jerk, right? It's like, I'm not a jerk. I don't have a bad, it's like your personality is what people perceive. And you may not feel like it's there, or maybe you said, I haven't even done anything to create a culture for my company. Well, if you don't do anything to create a culture, then chances are it's a bad culture, because there is a culture. It's a personality. Everybody has a personality, whether they're aware of it or not. People get an impression of them when they talk to them. And when you bring people into your company, they get a feel. What's your company feel like when they're in it working? And if you're not paying attention to that as you grow, you're going to have a lot of turnover. A lot of people coming and going because they don't like the personality of the company. So it may not be important when it's just you, but it certainly is important when you start scaling up. And frankly, if you are dealing with other businesses, other investors, investing partners like capital investors and things like that, your company's culture and your personality is going to have a huge impact, and they are reading that, right? So I walked into rooms when I was a new investor, my wife and I, is mostly credit to my wife, but we would be in rooms of people who had money to lend, and there would be other investors in the room, like a RIA or something, right? And everybody there, you go to RIA, everybody there is looking for money. Most people looking for money when they're there. And there would be investors there, and we would walk away with an investor partner who wants to work with us. And there were investors who had more experience and more track record, more proven success than we had. But, one of them, when it really opened my eyes, the first time I realized that that they're investing in you, not your company. They're lending you as a person money in their mind. Was we were working with some investors, an older couple. They were probably in their mid-60s, and at the time we were in our mid-30s. And we struck up a conversation, chatted with them for a little bit at the RIA, and they called us afterwards like, we want to work with you guys. We want to lend you money. And I know for a fact there were much more experienced lenders at that meetup. And I asked them at some point down the road after we had worked with a few times, like, why did you, because I was afraid to ask them at first, like, why would you work with me? I didn't want to scare them away because I wanted I wanted that investor. But at some point when we got to know them better, I said, why did you invest with us? Because I know there were people who probably could have shown you a much better track record than we had. We didn't have a track record. And they said, because you remind us of us when we were starting out. And that's all it was. Like, it wasn't that I had done so many flips or had so many successful deals under my belt. We just reminded them of themselves, and they liked that. So they funded the first probably 5 deals that we did. So, I mean, that's it. I think that that's a huge thing in masterminds and meetups and groups where you can go and talk to other people can really, that interaction with that couple who funded our first 5 deals launched our business. Like that was made all the difference in the world to us.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I think is really interesting here is that you mentioned, joining this mastermind, and that's when you saw that hockey stick. Like, you can just talk a little bit about the importance of, we hear, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. This is an obvious situation and an obvious example of that, where you really do need to be around those like-minded people and people that you want to achieve that level. I mean, the importance of that is astronomical. I mean, you have to be around those people in order to get into the proper mindset.
Yeah. The thing that I realize, having been a part of this group and being around people in this mastermind, is I think some people need more of it than others, but everybody needs a little bit of proof. Whether they admit it or not, they need a little bit of proof. And when you can be around people physically, rubbing elbows, talking to them, seeing their numbers, looking at their KPIs or their company metrics and understanding what's happening in their business, when you see some of that tangible proof, it makes it more real for you, right? To hear someone, on TV or whatever on a show, just talking about it, it's helpful, but it really, really changes things when you are around people physically and you have that proof of what's going on. The other thing about masterminds that you sort of realize after you're a part of one, especially a really good one, is you don't know what you don't know. So you don't always know what you should be asking. You don't know what you should be concerned about or not concerned about until you're around folks that are maybe a little farther down the road than you, or even just in the same boat, right? You're sitting in a room with people, like yourself, who are trying to grow and scale and be profitable and make sure that they're really running a responsible business. And they start asking questions, right? And it's like, well, that's a great question. I never would have thought to ask that.
Right.
So it's like that accelerated learning is so exponential because you're not only just getting direct influence, direct access, direct information and guidance from people who maybe have kind of been there, done that, but your peers in the group are also like opening up your brain to possibilities because let's face it, there's a million ways that you can run a real estate investing company. There's a lot of different strategies and tactics and things that you can do. You can't do them all, but you can hear what other people are doing and sort of understand that you don't have to get super tunnel vision and think, oh, I tried this one thing and it didn't work, so nothing works. Like, no, wait a minute. There's other ways you can skin this cat. And being in a mastermind just opens your brain. It's just like you unlock something. You open a door that was closed and next thing you know, the sky's the limit. And it really did. I thought in my local market at any given time before I joined the mastermind, the person that I knew of personally who had done the most deals, far and away the most successful, bar none, everybody wanted to be half as good as them in terms of volume. They did 26 deals in a year. Now, 26 deals is a lot of deals. I get that. It's not nothing. But to me, that was the universe of what was possible, right? Until I got around people who were doing 4 or 5 times that, and I go, whoa, wait a minute. There's other possibilities here. And the people who were doing 26 deals were doing it all themselves. It was a partnership, and they were doing everything themselves. So 26 is probably getting close to capping out what 2 people can manage, right? But I started getting around people who had a small team of people, and they were doing 100, and I was just like mind blown. Like that was game changing for me.
I find that was really cool. The concept that everybody needs proof, especially, whether they admit it or not. A great example of that is most first-time investors, they all get this concept that wholesaling is the key. If you want to get into wholesaling, lock up a property, get it sold, and there's no money out of pocket, until they do that for the very first time, then any ones after that seem to come a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's that, and I would make the argument is that they've given themselves the proof that it's possible. And until they have that proof that it's possible, they're their own barrier up until that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that proof, it comes with every new thing or every growth period that you have. So in other words, for me, doing the first deal, it was a flip for me. I needed to do that one. People like ask, this is why I actually am so into this, like just getting started mentality, because so many people get ready and they read and they study and they all this stuff, but it's like, just do your first deal. It'll answer 95% of your questions.
Right.
It'll make everything so much more clear. You could read 10 books and spend 5 years figuring out, or you can do one deal and you can be so much farther. And then once I did that one deal, I understood the concept, I believed it, and I started doing more and more and more. When I did my first wholesale deal, like I didn't even know for sure what wholesaling was. I knew the word, but I had no idea how to connect the dots. So I did my first one. I was like, oh, I get it, right? So that was proof. And then I got to a certain point and it was like, I didn't know it, but I sort of needed proof that there was something that I could do more than that. There was something beyond that. There was a bigger business opportunity than what I was aware of. So once I got in the mastermind and saw folks that were doing a lot more than me, now I had proof that there was something bigger out there for my business than what I thought there was. It's like, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to go, oh, okay, I see. And there'll be some new door that will get unlocked. But you don't do that if you just kind of sit in your own world, in your own bubble, and you never talk to anybody else. You sort of need to get out there and do things for sure. And then once you start doing things, surround yourself with people who are maybe doing the same or even a little bit more than you or a lot more than you. And let them sort of, it's like this this gravitational pull that you have to escape from. In my world, in my market, I was doing pretty well. I was talking at RIAs and I sort of feel like I had made it. But I was in this gravitational pull of my world. And once I broke out of that and there was nothing pulling me, kind of like my mindset wasn't being pulled down to this lower denominator, and I started seeing other things that people were doing, it's like, whoa, like, wow, I don't feel like I'm held back by 10 deals is like made it. Like I've done it. I've made it. I'm done growing. I can't really grow much more than that. I realized I could do more. I had to change my approach. I needed to build a team and I needed to start bringing people on that were better than me in some cases, and in some cases were as good as me or whatever. And then as you go and you're building a team, everyone who has a company, hired people, built a team, you realize there will be some turnover. It's very unlikely the first person and everybody you hire will like get that 30-year watch at the end of their career. Like they're not going to be there forever probably. Everyone has a journey. So you start top grading and you bring someone in and they're good for what they do and they kind of get you to the next level, and then they move on. You bring someone in who's maybe even better, and it kind of all that just starts building on each other. But that's the way to do it. If it was just me, I wouldn't be a quarter of what I'm doing right now, because I'm just I can't do it all. And frankly, some of the things that have to be done, I'm not great at. Like sales, I know I had to admit it. I was doing it when I was a one-man band, and I was competent, but I wasn't great. But when I brought in a great salesperson, like legitimately great, it blew me away. I couldn't believe how much better they were than me. I kind of thought I was all right, and now I know I'm okay. When you're an owner of a company, you tend to get good enough to sort of get by at sort of everything that you have to do. But at some point, when you do bring someone in who's truly like, that's their superpower, you just stand back and go, wow, they're doing it so much more effortlessly than me. I can catch a football. Not like Jerry Rice, like I can't do what he did, but I can catch a football. If you throw me a ball, I'll catch it. But it's like everybody has different skills, and you start bringing in people with specific skills, and it just explodes things.
Yeah.
We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you've found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes. And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @housedudes. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other investors out there find the show. And remember, massive positive impact requires massive positive action. We'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by housedudes.com. Do you have time to actively manage flipping and rentals yourself? If so, go for it. If you live in a market that won't cash flow or don't have the time to do all the work, are you just out of luck? If there was a way to participate more passively, would that appeal to you? I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the form on housedudes.com/investors, and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. This is first come, first serve, and we will have to stop taking applications when our goals are met. See you at housedudes.com/investors.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.